Right now, somewhere in the world, a woman is showing a man exactly how she feels about him. Not with words, not with a text message, with 4 specific parts of her body that she cannot stop herself from revealing when attraction takes over. And here's the terrifying part. 93% of men have absolutely no idea what they're looking at. They miss it every single time. And by the time they figure it out, she's already gone. But not you. Not after this video. A study published in the journal Evolution and Human Behavior found that women communicate romantic interest primarily through nonverbal signals. And they do it an average of 13 times before most men even begin to notice. 13 times. She's practically communicating with you in a language your brain hasn't been trained to read yet. Let me ask you something, and I want you to be genuinely honest with yourself. How many times have you walked away from a conversation thinking, I'm not sure if she was into me, only to replay it later and wonder if you missed something? Or worse, have you ever realized days later that she actually was interested, but the moment had already passed? If that's ever happened to you, you're not alone. And more importantly, you're not lacking anything. You were just never taught how to see what was already right in front of you. I'm going to be very real with you, because I've done every single thing I'm about to describe in this video. Most women have. The difference is we don't always know we're doing it either. These aren't calculated moves. These aren't rehearsed tricks. These are raw, involuntary biological responses that happen when a woman's body decides it wants someone before her brain even gets a vote. I'm going to walk you through 4 body parts that women instinctively expose, highlight, or draw your attention to when attraction is present. And I've saved the most powerful one for last, the one that once you understand it will completely change how you read every interaction from this point forward. If that's something you need, hit subscribe right now and stay with me all the way to the end. Because the final section of this video is about what to actually do with what you're seeing, and that's the part most men never figure out even when they've learned to see the signals. Let's begin. 1. The torso, the most powerful signal of all. We start here because this is the one that ties everything together. The one signal that, when you understand it, makes every other signal suddenly make more sense. And it's the one most men look right past because they're focused on everything except the most fundamental thing her body is doing. The torso, the center of her body. The chest, the stomach, the area that holds everything vital. This is about orientation, about openness, about where the front of her body is pointing, and why that matters more than almost anything else you could observe. Here's the biology behind it. The front of the human body is the most vulnerable area we have. It protects the heart, the lungs, the organs that keep us alive. That's why when we feel unsafe, we turn away. We create angles. We put our sides or our backs toward the source of discomfort. We protect that space instinctively, without deciding to, without realizing it's happening. So when a woman willingly opens the front of her body toward you and keeps it oriented toward you even when she doesn't need to, even when the conversation shifts, even when other people enter the interaction, that's not casual. That is trust made physical. That is her nervous system communicating something her words may not have said yet. The psychologist Albert Mehrabian established in his research, the most important thing in communication is hearing what isn't said. And what the orientation of her torso is saying, silently, consistently, involuntarily, is that her attention has chosen you. Her body has decided something before her conscious mind has fully caught up with that decision. Here's something I want to share, honestly. I was at a social gathering once, standing in a group of people, casually talking. Nothing intense. Nothing intentional. But later, someone showed me a photo from that moment, and it caught me completely off guard. Everyone else in the group was at slight angles, the way people naturally stand in groups. Except me. My entire body, my torso, was fully facing one person, locked in. Even though I was technically talking to someone else. My body had revealed my focus before my mind admitted it. And that's what I want you to understand about this signal. Her torso doesn't lie. It doesn't perform. It simply points toward what her attention and her nervous system have already decided matters most in the room. Here's what I want you to do with this. The next time you're in a group interaction with a woman, resist the urge to focus on her face or her words as your primary data. Instead, notice where the front of her body is consistently pointing. Not in one frozen moment. Over the course of the interaction. Does she consistently return her orientation toward you even after moving, laughing, talking to someone else? That consistency is the signal. Not any single position. The pattern of return. Now, once you understand the torso, you start noticing something fascinating. It doesn't travel alone. It arrives as part of a cluster. alongside 3 other signals that each tell a piece of the same story. Let's look at the one that most men think they understand, but almost always get completely backwards. 2. Her legs, the signal most men read completely wrong. This is the signal almost every man thinks he understands, and most interpret completely wrong. And once you see it the right way, it changes everything about how you interpret attraction in real time. Her legs. And before your mind jumps to the obvious, slow down. Because this has nothing to do with what she's wearing or how much skin is showing. That's surface level. What actually matters is direction, positioning, and movement. That's where the truth lives. Let me ask you something simple, but powerful. The next time you're standing near someone in a group, where do your feet naturally point? You don't consciously decide that. They just aim somewhere. And that's exactly the point. The lower body is one of the least consciously controlled parts of human behavior. While people carefully manage their facial expressions and choose their words with awareness, their legs and feet quietly reveal what they actually feel. So, here's what happens when attraction is present. Her legs will orient toward you. Even if she's talking to someone else, even if she's physically turned toward another part of the room, if her feet are pointed in your direction, her subconscious has already made a choice. That's not coincidence. That's alignment. And once you start noticing this, it becomes almost impossible to ignore. You'll be in a group and suddenly you'll see it, someone angled one way, but their feet telling a completely different story. Now, there's another layer to this that's even more revealing, the way she crosses her legs when sitting. If she crosses in a way that the top leg points toward you, that's an inviting signal. Subtle. But psychologically, she's angling her body in your direction. She's opening the line between the two of you. But if that top leg points away, that creates distance. A soft barrier. Not rejection necessarily, but not openness either. The psychologist Amy Cuddy demonstrated in her research, our bodies change our minds, and our minds can change our behavior, and our behavior can change our outcomes. What she documented was that physical positioning isn't just a reflection of emotional state, it actively shapes it. When her body orients toward you, when her legs point in your direction, she is not just reflecting attraction. Her physical positioning is deepening it in real time. And here's where most men make their biggest mistake with this signal. There's something I call the restless energy effect. When a woman is attracted to you, her body doesn't just become open. It becomes activated. There's a subtle shift in energy, a kind of internal buzz that she may not even recognize herself. And that energy often shows up in her legs. She might bounce her foot slightly. And here's the mistake most people make. They interpret that as boredom or impatience. But in many cases, it's the opposite. It's stimulation. Her nervous system is engaged. Her body is responding to your presence. There's adrenaline. There's dopamine. There's anticipation. And it has to go somewhere. So it shows up physically. I want you to really absorb that, because it flips a common assumption completely on its head. Not all movement means disinterest. Sometimes movement means she feels something she hasn't fully processed yet. Here's what I want you to practice. The next time you're with a woman, give yourself the specific assignment of noticing her feet and the top leg of her crossed position. Not in an obvious, staring way. Just in the way of general awareness. Let yourself register where her lower body is pointed throughout the interaction, not at a single moment, but consistently. Because again, pattern is everything. One orientation tells you little. Consistent orientation tells you everything. She's been pointing toward you before she's decided to move toward you. Now let's look at a signal so specific, so rarely discussed, that most men have never even been told to look for it. 3. The wrists, the signal almost nobody talks about. The inner wrists. I know that sounds oddly specific. But stay with me, because once you understand this, you'll start noticing it everywhere. And you'll realize how often it was happening right in front of you without you ever registering what it meant. When a woman is attracted to someone, she begins to unconsciously expose the soft underside of her wrists. She might gesture with her palm slightly upward. She might rest her chin on her hand in a way that leaves her wrist open and facing toward you. She might place her hands on the table in a relaxed, open position rather than closing them off or turning them inward. And just like the torso, this is about vulnerability and trust made physical. Think about what your body does when you feel genuinely uncomfortable or unsafe. You close off, arms cross, hands tighten, wrists turn inward. Everything moves to protect itself. But when there's attraction, when the nervous system has registered safety and interest simultaneously, the opposite happens. The body opens. And the wrists are one of the clearest and most honest indicators of that opening. There's also something fascinating happening beneath the surface here. The inner wrist is a pulse point, warm, sensitive, and naturally associated with scent. That's why perfumes are traditionally applied there. So when a woman subtly turns her wrist toward you, her body is not just being expressive. It's making her presence more noticeable to you on multiple levels. Without her realizing it's happening. Without her deciding to do it. The neuroscientist Antonio Damasio wrote, "We are not thinking machines that feel. We are feeling machines that think." The wrist exposure is the feeling machine speaking before the thinking machine has even formed an opinion. It is honest in a way that nothing conscious can be because it comes from a place that consciousness doesn't fully control. Here's a real story that captures this perfectly. A friend of mine once told me about a date she went on. She said the conversation was fine, nothing extraordinary, but she found the man genuinely attractive. She didn't think she was doing anything obvious or revealing. But later when she looked at a photo they'd taken at the table, something immediately stood out to her. Both of her hands were resting in front of her, completely open, wrists facing upward, relaxed. She laughed when she saw it, because her body had made a decision long before her mind had consciously caught up. Here's something I want you to honestly reflect on. Think back to a recent conversation with a woman where the energy felt good, where there was something light and alive between you. Can you remember how her hands were resting? Were they open or closed? Turned toward you or turned inward? Because the answer to that question might reframe the entire interaction in a way you didn't see at the time. Here's what I want you to practice. In your next interaction with a woman, simply add her wrists to your field of awareness. Not obsessively. Not in a way that makes you distracted from actually being present. Just notice. Are her hands open or closed? Are her palms facing upward or downward when she rests them? Does that position change as the conversation deepens? Because when her wrists begin to open and stay open, you're seeing her nervous system communicating something about how it's experiencing your presence. And that communication is more reliable than anything she could consciously choose to say. Now, let's look at the signal where everything begins, the one that most people have heard of, but almost no one understands deeply enough to read accurately. For the neck, where everything begins. The neck. Not just the fact that you can see it, but how she uses it. When a woman tilts her head slightly during conversation, or brushes her hair to one side, or touches her neck without even thinking about it, something very specific is happening beneath the surface. And it's happening for reasons that go far deeper than habit or styling. The neck is one of the most vulnerable areas of the human body. It protects vital structures, arteries, veins, the airway. From a deeply instinctive evolutionary perspective, exposing the neck is not something the body does casually. It does it when it feels safe. And more than safe, when it feels drawn toward someone. When the nervous system has registered that the person nearby is not a threat, but a pull. So when she tilts her head and leaves her neck open toward you, what her body is actually communicating is something ancient and honest. I trust this moment. I feel safe here. I'm open to you. And this is happening before she decides any of that consciously. Before she has even formed an opinion about whether she's attracted. Her body is already answering the question. The psychologist Paul Ekman, who spent decades studying involuntary emotional expression, wrote, "Emotions serve as a signal to others about our internal states, and these signals are often given without awareness." The neck exposure is one of those signals. Given without awareness. Given without intention. Pure biological honesty. But here's where your awareness becomes critical. It's rarely just one movement. It's a pattern. She might tilt her head, then touch her necklace, then brush her hair back, then touch the same spot near her neck again a few minutes later. That repetition is everything. One time could be random. 2 times might be coincidence. But when it keeps happening throughout your interaction, your brain should recognize it for what it is. Not noise. A signal. And not a coincidental one. Here's something I want to share personally because I think it will make this real. There was a time I was sitting across from someone I found genuinely attractive. And I remember feeling completely normal. Calm, composed, just having a conversation. Nothing dramatic. Nothing I was aware of performing. But later when I replayed it in my head, I realized something. My hand had been on my neck almost the entire time. Playing with my necklace. Brushing my hair back. Touching the same spot again and again. I didn't decide to do that. My body did. And that's the part most people never fully understand. Attraction doesn't always begin in the mind. Sometimes it begins in the body, and the body speaks first. Here's something I want you to try this week. In your next conversation with a woman where the energy feels genuine, give yourself the specific task of noticing her neck. Not in a way that's obvious. Just in the way of awareness. Does she tilt? Does her hand drift there? Does she brush her hair to one side in a way that exposes it? And does that happen once, or does it happen repeatedly as the conversation deepens? Because here's what I've seen again and again. The frequency of this gesture increases as the emotional intensity of the interaction increases. When the conversation moves from surface to something more real, the neck becomes more exposed. When she laughs genuinely, really laughs, not performatively, her head often tilts. When something you say lands somewhere meaningful in her, her hand often drifts there without her knowing. She's been exposing that vulnerability because something in your presence made it feel safe to do so. Now, let's look at what happens when you start seeing all four of these signals together, because that's when the picture becomes unmistakable. 5. How to read the pattern, not just the signals. Here's where everything starts to compound. Because once you understand each of the four signals individually, the real power is not in spotting one. It's in recognizing when they arrive together. Because when they cluster, when multiple signals appear simultaneously and consistently throughout an interaction, what you're looking at is no longer subtle. It's clear, it's consistent, and it's attraction. Her neck opens. Her wrists soften. Her legs orient. Her torso faces you fully. When you see multiple of these happening at once, not perfectly, not dramatically, but consistently, that's not a coincidence. That's the convergence of multiple involuntary systems in her body all communicating the same thing. The psychologist Daniel Kahneman wrote in his foundational research, "A reliable way to make people believe in falsehoods is frequent repetition, because familiarity is not easily distinguished from truth." What he was describing about cognition applies equally to attraction signals. It's not the single moment that creates certainty. It's the repetition, the pattern, the consistent return of the same signals across the course of an interaction. Here's something I want you to honestly reflect on. Think about the last interaction with a woman that felt good, where something was alive between you. Now walk back through it with what you just learned. Was her neck exposed and touched repeatedly? Were her wrists open when her hands rested? Were her legs and feet oriented toward you even when the conversation shifted? Was her torso consistently facing you rather than angling away? If the answer to most of those is yes, what you experienced wasn't just a pleasant conversation. It was a woman whose body was communicating genuine attraction, consistently, across multiple involuntary systems. And if you walked away from that interaction unsure of what she felt, it wasn't because the signals weren't there. It's because you hadn't yet been taught to recognize the language. Here's what I want you to start doing immediately. In every interaction that has any degree of genuine energy or warmth, give yourself one specific assignment. Count how many of the four signals are present. Not perfectly, just approximately. 1 signal present, pleasant interaction. 2 signals present consistently. Interest is likely. 3 or 4 signals present and clustering, attraction is almost certainly there. You're not guessing anymore. You're reading. But here's the part that most men never get to, even after they've learned to see the signals. And it's the most important part of all. 6. How to respond, timing, presence, and what to actually do.
You now see it.
Not just one signal, but the pattern. The neck opens. The wrists soften. The legs orient. The torso faces you fully. And suddenly what used to feel confusing starts to feel clear. Not loud and obvious. Quietly unmistakable. And this is exactly where most men make their critical mistake. They stop here. They recognize the attraction. They feel the shift. And then they hesitate. They start thinking instead of responding. Maybe I'm overreading this. What if I'm wrong? What if I ruin the moment? And in that hesitation, the moment passes. Not dramatically, just quietly. And often it doesn't come back. So let's talk about what actually matters now. Not just seeing the signals, but responding to them in a way that feels natural, confident, and aligned with what's actually happening between you. The psychologist Mihai Csikszentmihalyi wrote, "The best moments usually occur when a person's body or mind is stretched to its limits in a voluntary effort to accomplish something difficult and worthwhile." Responding to attraction in real time, without overthinking, without forcing, without performing, requires exactly that kind of voluntary effort. Not a leap, a stretch. A willingness to stay present in a charged moment rather than retreating to safety. Here's a real scenario I want you to walk into mentally. You're sitting across from her. The conversation is flowing, not perfectly, not like a movie, but easy. There's space. There's eye contact. You notice she's touched her neck a few times. Her wrists are relaxed and open. Her body is angled toward you even when she shifts in her seat. And there's a moment where the conversation pauses. Not awkwardly, just a natural pause. Most men rush to fill that silence. They grab for another topic. They break the tension because they don't trust it. But that pause is not empty. That's charged. That's where connection lives. So instead of rushing, you stay there for a second. You hold eye contact just a little longer than usual. Not staring. Not forcing. Just present. And you watch what happens. If she maintains that eye contact, if her body stays open instead of closing off, that's your answer. Here's something I want to make very clear. None of this is about pressure. None of this is about forcing a moment or taking something. This is about awareness and response. You're not creating attraction out of nothing. You're recognizing what's already there and meeting it. That's a completely different energy. And women feel the difference between those two energies the moment they encounter either one. Now, let's talk about real escalation. Because that word alone makes people nervous. They associate it with doing something bold or risky. But real escalation doesn't feel like a jump. It feels like a natural next step. If she's leaning in, you lean in slightly too. If she's maintaining eye contact, you hold it just a moment longer. If the space between you is closing, you allow it to close. You're not pushing. You're matching. You're meeting her where she already is. This is where many men get it wrong. They try to skip steps. They go from 0 to 100 because they think confidence means speed. It doesn't. Confidence means presence. Confidence means you're paying attention to what's actually happening between the two of you, instead of what you think should happen according to some idea you had before the conversation started. Here's a simple exercise I want you to start using immediately. The next time you're in a conversation with someone you're genuinely attracted to, don't focus on impressing her. Don't focus on saying the perfect thing. Instead, shift your attention to observing. Notice her body language without overanalyzing it. Just observe. Then mirror one small thing naturally. If she leans slightly forward, you lean slightly forward. If she slows down her speech, you slow down yours. If she relaxes her posture, you relax yours. This is called behavioral mirroring, and it creates a subconscious sense of connection and safety that no amount of clever conversation can manufacture. But here's the key. It has to be subtle. You're not copying her. You're synchronizing with her. And when that synchronization happens, something changes in the dynamic. It feels easier, more natural, more real. And here's what I want you to remember about uncertainty. What if you're not sure? What if you think you're seeing signals, but you're not certain? Good. That uncertainty is healthy, because the goal is never to assume. The goal is to test gently and observe the response. You make one small move. Maybe it's holding eye contact slightly longer. Maybe it's leaning in slightly. Maybe it's letting a moment of silence stretch just a beat. And then you watch. Does she meet you there? Or does she pull back? Because her response will always give you more information than your assumptions ever could. Attraction is not something you chase. It's something you step into. If she's showing you openness, you respond with openness. If she's creating distance, you respect that distance. That's what emotional intelligence looks like in real life. Not calculation. Awareness and response. Presence and patience. And the willingness to trust what you're seeing rather than second-guessing yourself back into confusion. Here's what I want you to carry with you from everything we've covered. The next time you're in a conversation and you notice her neck tilting open, her wrists softening and turning upward, her legs orienting in your direction, and her torso facing you fully, you'll know something she might not even fully realize yet. She's already leaning toward you. In 4 different ways simultaneously. Her body has already decided. The only question left is whether you'll meet her there. Don't rush it. But don't ignore it either. Stay present in it. Let it build for a moment. And then take one small step forward. Not a leap. A step. Because attraction grows in steps, not jumps. And the more you trust yourself in those small moments, the more natural everything becomes. Now, let's bring everything together. You've learned the 4 signals. The torso, the most fundamental indicator of where her attention and trust actually live. The legs, the signal most men misread, carrying direction, orientation, and the honest energy of stimulation. The wrists, the quiet, overlooked signal that reveals openness at the most vulnerable pulse points of her body. And the neck, where everything begins, where safety and attraction first become visible before any other signal has a chance to appear. You understand that these signals don't travel alone. They cluster. They repeat. They form a pattern. And it's the pattern, not any single gesture, that gives you reliable, honest information about what's actually happening in an interaction. And you understand that seeing the signals is only half of the equation. The The other half, the part that actually matters, is staying present enough to meet what you're seeing.
Not forcing it.
Not performing it. Just recognizing what's already there and responding with the kind of calm, aware presence that allows attraction to move naturally from signal to connection. So here's what I want you to do from this point forward. The next time you're in a conversation that has any real energy to it, give yourself the assignment of awareness. Not obsessive analysis. Just notice. Where is her torso pointing? Where are her feet? Are her wrists open? Has her hand drifted to her neck more than once? And when you start seeing those signals cluster, stay. Be present in it. Trust what you're seeing. And take one small step forward. Now, I want to hear from you. How many of these signals have you been seeing without knowing what they meant? Drop a comment below and tell me, and share the one that surprised you most. I read every single comment, and I'll reach out to some of you personally. And if this video opened your eyes even a little, like it's so more people can discover this conversation, share it with someone who needs to see this. Because there are so many people out there missing these signals every single day, not because they don't care, but because no one ever showed them what to look for. And subscribe if you haven't already, because this is exactly the kind of awareness that compounds over time. The more you understand human behavior, the more natural your interactions become. And once you see this language clearly, you cannot unsee it. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. It genuinely means everything to me. I'll see you in the next video. Take care of yourself.